So we are beginning Sefer Yeshaya this year. How many years it'll take us to complete it, we don't know. I've prepared actually only a few psukim this evening because there's so much here and we want to do it a little bit as an introductory shiur. And so I'll ask you, I'm not sure that we're going to do every parak inside, over 60 chapters. We might skip around a little bit. By all means, I'll try to give you some heads up as to if you want to, prepare it on your own a little bit, just in case we skip a little bit. But a tremendous sefer. And so I'm going to give you this introductory part to it as well. I didn't photocopy sheets because it's actually in our Chumashim. If you turn to page 1195 in your Chumashim, the first chapter of Sefer Yeshaya is the Haftorah for Sefer Devarim. The Haftorah for Sefer Devarim is the third of three Haftorah for which part of the year? Tisha, right, the Tisha B'Av Haftorahs, right? So the first two are taken from Sefer Yirmiyahu, and this last one, right before Tisha B'Av, is from the first parak of Sefer Yeshayahu. Okay, so the first thing I think that we have to talk about is the understanding of Sefer Yeshayahu being the first Sefer in Nevi'im Achronim. Right, we have this interesting breakdown of how we look at Tanakh, with our first four Svarim there being considered Nevi'im Rishonim. So we talk about Yehoshua and Shoftim and Shmuel and Melachim. These are considered Nevi'im Rishonim. And Nevi'im Achronim, right, is Yeshayahu and Yirmiyahu and Yechezkel and all the 12 books of what we call Trei Asar. Okay? And so one would first think, the reason it's called Nevi'im Rishonim versus Nevi'im Achronim is because all the prophecies that are Nevi'im Rishonim chronologically came before the prophecies that are Nevi'im Achronim. Now, it can't be that that's the answer, because that's how a book works. Meaning, even in Nevi'im Rishonim, right, all the stories that happen in Sefer Yehoshua happen before Sefer Melachim, right? So what's the rationale to make a cutoff after Sefer Melachim before Sefer Yeshayahu, right? Anybody ever think about this before? Anyone? Yeah, so give me some ideas.
I was thinking about it because I was being an Apikoros and I was comparing the Christian and the Jewish.
I'm just letting you know, the rabbi asked that we record the shiurim, okay? So, Ein Adam Meisem Etzatzmo Rasha, but we'll take what you say.
And I happen to notice that the Christians put the book of Ruth right after Shmuel.
Correct.
And it's chronologically.
That makes a lot of sense.
But the question is, do we sensitively do it that way? We don't.
We don't.
Chronicles, our last book is Chronicles, and that's sort of
right. Why don't we have Ruth after Shmuel?
It's not going to be.
Doesn't have the same kedusha to it, probably. Right. That's okay. That's a curiosity.
It's Megillah.
It has a different purpose. It's true.
Maybe it has to do with the advent of threats to the Beis Hamikdash and thereafter.
Okay.
In other words, the Achronim saw the demise coming, or prophesied it, railed against the behavior.
Terrific.
Whereas before that, the behavior, arguably was stable. The Malchus and
Yeah. So, Mike, you're definitely onto something. I'll give you the classic understanding, which is it's hard to really pinpoint exactly where it comes from, and then I'll talk more about where you're coming from. So the classic understanding is that Nevi'im Rishonim, okay, and you talk about Yehoshua, and you talk about Shmuel, that they, in their prophecies, they constantly linked the Jewish people, even when they gave them rebuke. They constantly linked the Jewish people back to the covenants that they'd made earlier with God. It was a relationship based on looking back at what you have accomplished until now, look at what the relationship has been until now, and you have to get back to that point, right? And so anytime where you veer from that relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're negating those original covenants, right? Nevi'im Achronim have a different focus. There's a shift. Right? Instead of looking back at past covenants, right, it's always an aim to the future. Right? Sefer Yeshayahu, for example, is known as our Sefer Nechama. It's our book of consolation. The book doesn't open up like that. The book is harsh rebuke, and we'll talk about why Yeshaya was uniquely positioned to give such harsh rebuke to the Jewish people. Something that perhaps Eliyahu Hanavi or Yirmiyahu, for instance, would be castigated and thrown down and not listened to and ignored, right? Yeshayahu somehow is able to have the ear of the Jewish people, which we clearly have to talk about. But Yeshayahu and the rest of the Nevi'im Achronim, and there, by the way, it's interesting that the books are, Yoshua is named after a person, but something like Malachim and Shoftim, right? It's more positions than it is people.
There are a lot of people in the book.
Right.
You can't claim it just one person.
Okay. You could have separated the books out a little bit, right? But they have a different focus. They're looking for the future. They're looking towards a new type of relationship that they're going to be able to score with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's not so much about past covenants, but more about a future geula, a future relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I think that's the classic explanation. It's what bothers me that it still doesn't answer why Yeshayahu should be the first one of Sefer Achronim. Meaning, Yeshayahu is prophesying, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but Yeshayahu is prophesying approximately 100 to 150 years prior to the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash. Okay? Sefer Melachim ends, right, with essentially the stories of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. So if I was writing it, I would say it would make sense after Sefer Melachim to talk about Yechezkel, who's a couple generations prior to the destruction, then talk Yirmiyahu, right, which is in the midst of the destruction, and then give us Yeshayahu as the book of Nechama, the book of consolation, about what the third temple is going to be about, how we can take comfort. That would make sense to me, right, if it would go from Sefer Melachim to this other part of history. Why is it that Sefer Yeshayahu is book one, and what happened that Nevi'im Rishonim ends and Nevi'im Achronim, in some respect begins, is a fascinating question. So I think the answer to that is as follows. We will learn that the first king that Yeshayahu prophesied was during the reign of Melech Uziyahu, King Uzziah. Now,
On that point, I can't do the numbers in my head, but according to the biblical criticism, folks, Isaiah, who has a 200-year lifespan. Is that crazy, or am I
Our tradition is that Yeshayahu prophesies for 80 years, and that he lives 120 years. A little bit like Moshe Rabbeinu, which we'll talk about. He lives over a 120-year period, right? Yeah. Who was he murdered by? We'll get to it. His grandson. The evil Menashe, right? So here's the story with King Uzziah. Okay, Melech Uziyahu. Melech Uziyahu was generally a righteous king for the most part, a successful king, a spiritually uplifting king, so much so that he made a tremendous name for himself and the people followed him. At a certain time, though, he got haughty. Okay, anybody remember the amazing story? So he got haughty and he decided that he was going to usurp the role of the Kohanim and bring the Ketores in the Beis HaMikdash. Okay? He's about to bring the Ketores in the Beis HaMikdash, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu stops him at this point, right? And gives him tzaras, leprosy, thank you, right? And he He avoids taking the role of the Ketaris. Now, at this point, right? Why was this the breaking point? Right? It's at this point where Yeshayahu is going to take over a little bit. Now, why was this the breaking point? So Chazal seem to indicate the following. This is based on the Radak and the Maharal a little bit. For the first 700 years in exile, right, since Yetzias Mitzrayim, right, so if Yeshayahu is prophesizing, we have prophecy for approximately 1,000 years, let's say, right, let's say 1300 BCE to about 300 BCE, right, if 400 years from the Exodus to the first Beis HaMikdash, the first Beis HaMikdash stands for 400 years, that's 800 years, and then you have some remnant of prophecy during the beginnings of the second Beis HaMikdash. So if you call it 900, 1,000 years is when we have prophecy for. So during those first, let's call it 700 years, 650, 700 years, right, before Yeshayahu, what would happen? Okay? Anytime the Jewish people would sin, anytime they would engage in Avodah Zarah, Shvichas Damim, the big three, anytime they get on HaKadosh Baruch Hu's nerve, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends an aggressive neighbor, one of their neighboring countries, right? And the threat is not exile, not destruction, but an oppression within the land of Israel. The Jewish people suffer at the hand of that oppressor within the land of Israel. They respond by acts of tshuva. They respond by acts of unity and brotherhood. They respond by coming back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that aggressive neighbor goes back to where he came from, right? And there's Jewish autonomy that is once again restored within the land of Israel. That's the first 700 years, right? With this episode of Melech Uziyahu, right, what happens is now with Yeshayahu, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu says we're changing the game. You're just not hopping. You're not getting it right. So instead of an aggressive neighbor coming and impressing upon you all these decrees within the land of Israel, now the threat that the prophets are going to give to the people is if you are not following the Torah, if you are not engaging in a genuine relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what's going to happen? Right? The invader is going to come in and send you out. There was no talk about exile and the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash prior to Yeshayahu. Right? It was about really what's going to happen to us as we engage in life in the land of Israel. It was really these first messages of Yeshayahu to say, no, I need you to understand, right, that exile is a very real possibility, that destruction of the Beis HaMikdash is a very real possibility. And that, the story with Uziyahu, according to the Maharal, is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, of where you have essentially this righteous king who takes on this identity of haughtiness and gaiva and excessive pride, and that's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu says our leaders are not understanding it, and certainly the masses are not understanding it. And so we need to change the threat. We need to change the rules of the game to some extent. So according to the Maharal, the reason there's this break between the Nevi'im Rishonim and the Nevi'im Achronim is because the Nevi'im Rishonim were always prophesizing a invasion within the land of Israel, but never a threat of exile, and the Nevi'im Achronim are very much emphasizing a real threat to exile and the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, which is really a fascinating concept, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would go to the next level. I was trying to think why does that have to be? Meaning, why does God, if the Jewish people, right, and we learn time and time again that if the Jewish people are really only deserving of the land of Israel, right? I mean, the question comes by Bereshis already, right? Was Adam Harishon created in Gan Eden or outside Gan Eden?
In Gan Eden. Well, the parts, they got earth, the ground from all over the world.
So the Torah says explicitly, right, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Adam and then placed him into Gan Eden, right? So the Mefarshim asked the question, what is the impact, right? What is the message of creating man outside of Gan Eden, placing him inside of Gan Eden, and then eventually
You don't have a
exiling him out of
It's
Gan
not like
Eden.
You were born here. You don't have a right to stay here.
Right? And it parallels the Jewish people and Eretz Yisrael. Right? The Jewish people are created as a nation outside the land of Israel in Egypt, brought into the land of Israel, with the threat always hanging over them that they can be now kicked out of Israel. So the way that Rav Pam, right, Rav Avram Pam understood this is he suggested beautifully that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates anything in this world, right, he can't possibly create it without giving it the vitality that it requires. Right? So if he's going to create a person, he's going to give it, he talks about the mezonos of a person, the livelihood, the food of a person. We shouldn't think that the fact that we're able to have food on our table, that's kind of using up our merit, it's using up our zechuyos. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give us life, right, he's got to give us those things that we need to live. Right? It's like Hannah's prayer to God. If you created me, right, you can either create me in the upper realms where I'm a malach, and if I'm a malach, I don't procreate, I don't eat, I don't drink, I'm a malach. But if you give me life in this world, what else do you have to give me? The ability to eat, the ability to drink, the ability to procreate. Right? That was Hannah's argument to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates us in this world, he's got to give us everything that we need to be able to continue to live. If he doesn't give us that, it means it's a luxury. It means it's outside the necessity, the category of necessity. So by the message, Rav Pam says, of creating Adam outside of the land, outside of Gan Eden, is that Gan Eden is always something that we have to earn. It's always something that we have to shoot for. It's not a necessity to live. Right? It's something that we have to want. The same is true with Eretz Yisrael. Right? If the Jewish people were created inside of Eretz Yisrael, it means that they're inexplicably linked. A Jew cannot be without the land of Israel. Right? The fact we feel that, right? But the fact that we were created, that we became a nation outside land of Israel, means that we always have to see Israel as something that we have to earn. Kadosh Baruch Hu is never just going to give it to us. So here too, right? We always talk about the fact that, the land itself is a zechus. If we earn it, we get to be there. If we don't earn it, that's the first thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes away from us. So I would have said, right from the opening tip, right, going back to Yehoshua and Shoftim and the Malachim, why should there be, an invader is coming in and oppressing us in the land of Israel? As soon as we go bad, what should be the threat? We're going to be kicked out of the land of Israel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu changes it when it comes to Nevi'im Achronim. That's what I'm having a trouble trying to understand.
In the Torah, he doesn't say right away that we're going to leave the throne and land of Israel. He said first that we're going to have wars in the Chumash.
You're saying in the curses and the what's the theory behind it though? Go straight to the.
He wants to give you a break.
If you do this, then you got right. If you do good, then you'll have the blessing. But also, when Moshe in Devarim, the whole Sefer Devarim is Moshe's discourses to the Bnei Yisrael, they created a new bris. They basically created a new bris. Why? Why do you think they needed a new bris? He says, when you get into this country, the land, the holy land, you're going to sin, you're going to be attracted by the other, you're not going to foreseeable. So he made them declare that they accepted the bris. Yeshua does the same thing.
Yeah.
After the conquest, Yeshua, because he's going to die, he has a big hakel ceremony in which he makes them swear that they're going to not swear, but he makes them do another
So
bris.
they have a new covenant, a new bris.
So in other words, it was foreseeable that they're going to, at least the leaders foresaw that there was going to be
Trouble.
problems that you're
Right.
It took time for it to cook, it took time for it to...
So therefore, we don't go right away to exile and destruction. We give it time to boil a little bit.
Two possibilities.
We give it something I really don't know the answer.
Those is not the advent of the sinning, it's the ripening of the sinning to the point where the earth has to throw them out.
Mm-hmm.
The earth can't survive
Right. So that builds up. That builds up. That doesn't happen.
It's good to know.
Okay.
I think that one thing is God loves us with his children, so he gave us several opportunities to repent. When he saw it wasn't going to work, then he had to come down to heaven. The other thing also is he warns us later on in the Chumash that it's going to be Hester upon him. Okay? It's going to be hard to do Hester upon him in Israel because
There's no such thing.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So the Hester upon him is going to have to come outside of Israel.
Yeah, but that meaning, so let Hester Panim and Galus be the only track of punishment there is. Right? If Hester Panim is the ultimate in HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying, you don't want me, I'm withdrawing from you, so let that be the first thing. Right? My point is that you almost understand the Jewish people, right? Not fully getting what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants because the punishment is not strict enough.
Why is this event a fulcrum event? Because in the grand scheme of things, we have so many good kings. Most of them went bad at some point.
Right.
And this is not like as bad as so many of them were along the way. So I don't understand why this is the...
Why this should be the...
The same thing happened in Canaan. Canaan, had reached a certain madrega of sin.
Before the Jewish people could come in and usurp the land.
And the same thing with Mitzrayim was a land of tumult.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Mitzrayim of Tameh.
Mm-hmm.
So that was when the Jews went beyond the normal patterns of sinning into idolatry.
So that answers Eddie's question. Meaning, there's always two things that we're trying to balance. There's the decision that God says, okay, now's the time, and that's within His account, and we don't necessarily get a perspective from His account. And then there's a time that we can see, yes, it's beginning to rot a little bit. It's interesting. So the very first, maybe there's something to it. The very first word is Chazon Yeshayahu. So Chazal love this word. They love to give a musar drasha on this word. What's the word Chazon? Right? So Rav Shimshon Falhirsch. The word Chazon comes from the word Chazeh. So Chazeh in the Torah, oftentimes when referring to karbanos, it's referring to the Chazeh HaTnufa, right? It's almost like the breast of the animal. Rav Shimshon Falhirsch says this is the location of the heart. Right? Location of the heart. So Chazon Yeshayahu, Rav Hirsch says beautifully. He says what was going on at that time, in the middle of the first Beis Hamikdash, right, is that everything appeared to be beautiful. Right? You had kings who were still from the lineage of David and Shlomo HaMelech. You had Nevi'im who were still upholding the Torah. You had the multitude of masses who were bringing karbanos, and the Beis Hamikdash was standing, and you still had prosperity and wealth, and so from the looks of things, it was wonderful, right? Yeshayahu's job, right? It's like we had the North Shore Open House. So
Don't fix something that's not broken.
no, so we had the North Shore Open House. So that, if you've ever been to high school, it's a beautiful building, right? It's a beautiful building, inside and out. It's a beautiful building. My daughter, I had to pick up my daughter, pick up my son, whatever. She had never seen the building, right? She's in 6th grade. And so we drive up to the building. She says, "Oh, this is where I want to go." I said, "You haven't walked inside. You don't know a thing about it." She said, "Yeah, but the building is beautiful, right?" It was a good example for me to teach her. Don't judge a book by its cover, right? Always, right? You have to look inside sometimes. This is Yeshayahu. Chazon Yeshayahu is that his task is going to have to be to try to persuade the people that which you see is not necessarily what's really going on. If you're perceptive enough, right, to the eye, you have to see what's in the heart as well. And so that's the way Rav Hirsch really starts his commentary of Chazon Yeshayahu. So Eddie, I'm not sure that it fully integrates your question, but what's going on at this point is really the beginnings of the dehumanizing or the diminishment of the first Beis Hamikdash, And so this is where Yeshayahu now comes in. And so this seems to be the transition.
There's also a rationale for the Golos, which is that the Bnei Yisrael are supposed to go into the other nations and change them, and plant the seeds for the eventually, like the Olenu prayer, where the nations get a feel for the Kadosh Baruch Hu and the midos of the Bnei Yisrael as they do tshuva in Golos, and so therefore that's part of the master plan.
So that's always been fascinating to me. You're telling me then, right, that the Jewish people in Israel with the Beis Hamikdash and with Giloi Hashchina, right, that was supposed to end because we had a second mission as well to be an Or LaGoyim.
Temporarily, they're going to go back. But look at the United States, perfect example. The United States is essentially founded by people who believed in the Judeo midos and the Judaic creation story.
Okay.
If the Jews are not following God in Israel, which is their land, how can they be a model for the God? It's ridiculous. The only way that they're going to be a model is if they get really shot down in far countries.
Yeah, but don't we believe what Mike is suggesting? I mean, Chazal have certainly spoken about that our job in Galus is to be an Or LaGoyim.
There are, what do you call it? There are sparks that are in Galus, and we're supposed to collect those sparks and bring them back.
Talk practically to me. What does that mean?
No, sparks of Kedusha. You're supposed to find Kedusha in the
Answer your question. Aren't we supposed to be an Or LaGoyim in exile?
It's the same thing. It's the same one.
So you go back to the Ramban that we've talked about many times, right? Where the Ramban says, every mitzvah that we do here doesn't really count as kind of practice for what we want to do in Eretz Yisrael. So we keep acquainted with the relationship that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But does it really count in the same way in America? In Galus, meaning we're supposed to be an Or LaGoyim here in the way that Torah still can impact us in Galus. But you're right, it's not going to have the same impact when we're Banim LaHashem in the base, in the Beis Hamikdash in Eretz Yisrael. There's a hierarchy, and there are ways that we can improve ourselves when we're in Eretz Yisrael, but still in Galus, we have a job to do. Okay, so this might explain, if you believe me, why Sefer Yeshaya is at least a good point to be able to break between Nevi'im Rishonim and Nevi'im Achronim. Second question that we'll talk about tonight is, why is Sefer Yeshaya before Yechezkel and Yirmiyahu? Okay, so the Abarbanel asks this question and gives 4 different reasons as to why Yeshaya should come first. So his first answer seems to be the only answer that he needs to give. What's his first answer? Hello, dummy. Chronologically, right? Yeshayahu comes before Yechezkel and Yirmiyahu. Okay, Yeshayahu, as we said, is prophesizing 150, 200 years prior to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Yechezkel and Yirmiyahu are very much towards when the destruction is actually occurring. So of course put Yeshayahu first. Again, what would be the rationale to say that just because chronologically it's first doesn't mean that it should be the first Sefer? So I think that's what we articulated earlier. That from coming on the heels of Malachim Beis, where already we spoke about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, that it makes sense to fill in the picture with the prophecies of Yechezkel and Yirmiyahu, and then come to the Sefer Nechama of Yeshayahu. Meaning, the first chapter of Sefer Yeshayahu is clearly not his first nevuah. Right? The fact that we read it on Erev Tisha B'Av it was put first for a number of reasons, which we'll get to. It's probably the 6th chapter that is chronologically the first prophecy of Yeshayahu. So you can't tell me that Yeshayahu goes first because chronologically we always follow what comes first. Even in the Sefer itself, it's not positioned that way. It's not ordered that way. So that's what the Abarbanel says, that yes, I'm giving the answer that chronologically comes first, but I have to give you multiple answers because that's not always what is the end all be all. We know the famous machlokas even in the Torah itself of ein mukdam ma'uchar b'Torah that we don't necessarily go in order. So that's the Abarbanel's first answer. Okay, what's the sorry? Yes.
So he came later.
Correct. Right. Who wrote Sefer Yeshayahu? So the last king that Yeshayahu prophesizes in, remember 80 years, is the Chizkiah. Chizkiah is a pretty good guy as well. One of the accomplishments of Chizkiah is that he loved to round up Talmidei Chachamim and give them time to learn and to record Svarim. And so one of the Svarim that he basically paid these guys to write was Sefer Yeshayahu. So it wasn't until the latter part of his life where these things were being, they redacted. Chazal talk about the fact that redacted Shir HaShirim. This group of scholars of, I think they call them Anshe Chizkiah, is get credit for a lot of good stuff. So, Abarbanel's second reason for why Yeshayahu comes first.
Because you have comfort at the end of it. You don't want something that's going to be...
That's his fourth reason. Very good. Right? Geula, the fact that it's a Sefer Geula and a Sefer Nechama, right, is something that gives it more chashivus. It gives it its significance, its importance, and that should be on our mind all the time. That's his fourth reason. Very good. His second reason, don't forget about yichus. Yichus matters, right? And Yeshayahu had a lot of yichus. He had a lot of yichus from a lot of different perspectives. So the first yichus that he had was from Malchus. He was, his father Amot, as we'll see, right? Amot, Ayin Mem Vav Tzadi, Amot, was a brother to a king of Israel from the line of David, Amaziah. Now it's funny that they would have essentially the same name. Right? Like some people call Yeshaya, and Yeshayahu. We saw that by Uzziah, right? I mentioned Melech Uzziah, Melech Uzziyahu, and Melech Uzziah. Uzziah is essentially an abbreviation of Uzziyahu. Yeshaya is essentially an abbreviation of Yeshayahu, right? And we find Amot and Amaziah. Amot is essentially an abbreviation of Amaziah. Where's the word Amat? What's the shoresh? What does it mean? Strength, right? So, right, chazak. But so not no, because chazak ve'amatz is with an aleph, right? So amatzia. Now the aleph and the ayin sometimes are interchangeable. I guess that means it's the same thing here. That would be interchangeable. So you are correct. Amatzia. Amot is with an ayin. Oh, I'm wrong. Good. Wonderful. Sorry. For some reason I was thinking I ain't right. Even better. So Amot is with an aleph. You guys are 100% correct. I'll sit down. You give the shiur. Good. All right. So this is Amot and Amatzia. I don't know why they're named the same. The brothers, they have the same characteristics. But the point is Yeshayahu is the nephew of a king of Israel. Okay. And Chazal actually talk about the fact that he was uniquely positioned to give rebuke to the Jewish people because they had known him for many years to be an upstanding, righteous individual, to come from this family of royalty, to be somebody who people looked up to, and to be somebody, Chazal tells the fact that nobody loved Klal Yisrael like Yeshayahu loved Klal Yisrael. Right, we talk about Eliyahu who had his troubles with Klal Yisrael. Then now we look, Eliyahu Hanavi, this great savior of the Jewish people. Him and the Jewish people didn't always get along. He was very harsh with them. Yeshayahu, you needed anything, right? You went to Yeshayahu. Yeshayahu had the people's heart, right? He really was a lover of the Jewish people. We also find one of the more well-known stories with Yeshayahu towards the end of his life is when Sancheriv is attacking. Right after Sancheriv expels and exiles the 10 tribes, right? Yeshayahu is only prophesying to the northern kingdom, to the southern kingdom, to Yehuda. His colleagues like Hosea and Amos, not Amos, but Amos, Ayin Mem Vav Samech, those are prophets in his in his time who were prophesying to the northern kingdom. But when Sancheriv comes, in the time of Chizkiah HaMelech, his fourth king that he reigns, so Chazal tell us that on Pesach night, right, it was in their zechus that they were learning Torah. Chizkiah and Yeshayahu, that was the night that Sancheriv's army, if you remember the story, we'll go through it again, that Sancheriv's army miraculously kind of dissolves and is unable to capture the southern kingdom, right? So Yeshayahu was always somebody who stood for righteousness and being an upright individual. So people already, even such a long career of prophecy of those 80 years, he was easy for someone, he was easy for the people to say, this is somebody who deserves the accolades, our attention. As opposed to Yirmiyahu, right, who kind of came on the scene without much history to him, where people said, who are you? Right? Why should you be telling us what we're doing? So Yeshayahu has that family history. Now that's from the royalty side, right? The Chazal tell us that his father Amotz, in addition to his brother being a king, Amotz was a Navi. Chazal tell us that it's Yeshayahu's wife, I forget her name, I'm not even sure that I knew it in the first place, was also probably a prophetess, not one of the 7 mentioned, but also a prophetess, that this was a tremendous yichus from the nevuah side of things, from a prophet. There's so many prophets, right? We know that there are over 1 million prophets during this time. Just because you're a Navi doesn't, okay, I don't want to say a dime a dozen, but there are enough prophets. But when you come from a family of prophets, that speaks more about you. And certainly when you also come from Malchus, again, that's 2 things in your favor. So says the Abarbanel, the reason that Yeshayahu is going to be the first Sefer learned to Nevi'im Achronim is not only because it's a Sefer of Geula and Yeshua, and it's not only because chronologically it comes first, but that he's got Yichus on his side. It made sense to go and listen to the speeches, to the fiery rebukes of Yeshayahu, because people indeed tune their ear to Yeshayahu. Let him be the first speaker then in Nevi'im Achronim. And the final reason, which is really the third reason, if you go in the order of the Abarbanel, why Yeshayahu is given first crack at Nevi'im Achronim is because he is considered the greatest Navi ever to live aside from Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? He has the clearest nevuah. Sometimes it's not so easy for us to see how clear it is, but we'll go through and try our best. But the reputation is that he has the clearest prophecies. We know that he lived 120 years similar to Moshe Rabbeinu, prophesizing for 80 years, a long history, a long legendary career like Moshe Rabbeinu. His love for the Jewish people is similar to Moshe Rabbeinu. This astuteness and love, connection with God and connection with Am Yisrael puts him at this prominent stage, and therefore he gets his Sefer, his words also are to be first in line when it comes to Nevi'im Achronim.
There's an opinion in the Gemara that Hosea is very good at all of
Oh yeah? That Hosea was. Also. Okay.
I've done some research on Hosea, and I don't think, I was
Astounded by it. Yeah, right. Yeshayahu and Moshe were never given the opportunity to go take prostitutes and go say here, right?
most of the commentators I've seen agree that Yeshaya was this giant among the
Giant of a man, yeah.
Comes out of like a lot of people.
Right, to say it was Hosea. What was Hosea's other name? Some people understood Hosea to be...
There's some overlap.
Yeah, I forget what it is. Okay, so before going into the psukim, which we'll do a little bit tonight, just a couple of psukim, one other thing that I wanted to do with you is to give you a brief recap of at least the first 2 prakim, because I think they're significant, and give you an idea from Rav Schwab and the Sforno a little bit, and to figure it out from that perspective. The first 2 prakim, as you'll see, and we'll go through it, really deal with karbanos. Right? Now, we've learned now Tanakh for a while. right? You've learned Tanakh all your life. We know the major theme of Tanakh is that when you're given a korban, you can't just think of it as an animal. You gotta put some meaning. You gotta put some devotion into it. It's gotta have a mindset, right, to match, right, the slaughtering of the animal, to feel like you're being slaughtered. That there's got to be a mindset that corresponds with the actual physical act of bringing your korban. When we talk about mitzvos, the same thing is true. Meaning, no one should think, at least in my opinion, that merely by performing an act of mitzvah, that there's a holiness, a righteousness that now permeates the human being. That when there's this discussion in the Gemara about mitzvos, tzrichos, kavana, do mitzvos require intention or not? What that's really getting at is, can you perform a mitzvah and it not, right? If it doesn't make an impact on you, is there a worth to the mitzvah? So it's hard to say that there's no worth to it. A mitzvah is a mitzvah whether you intended to do it or not, or whether you put the right motivation behind it or not. Okay? But the mitzvah with a kavana, nothing can compare. I was teaching today, and I got upset at a student because there were bags of clothing in the classroom that were left unintentionally. They were bags of clothing that were being collected to give away, to chesed, okay, whatever. And it was not left in a suitable manner for learning. So I said, okay, guys, we're going to just pick up the bags of clothing. We're going to put them to the back. This way they're not strewn around in the classroom. Let's just do it this way. And one of the kids decides that he took, instead of picking up the bag and properly putting it right to the back, what did he do? So he picked up the bag and threw it to the back of the room, and all the clothes come out. Okay. So what did I say to the kid? I said, all day long, we are in a yeshiva learning Torah. And the very first opportunity you get to demonstrate if whether or not the Torah has permeated you, of whether or not you've understood what's going on, right? You do that. And it hit him hard. And if you ask my students, I tend to say it bluntly to them, right? But I said, we love you, right? But this is the opportunity you got. This is why you're learning Torah. Mitzvot srichos kavana. This is the opportunity you get to demonstrate that you understand what Torah is supposed to do to a person. So when we're not, I'll give you a wonderful example. Schwab talks about this. I love this example. Famously, Yaakov is sending word to Esav, right? Im Lavan garti, right? Va'ichar arata. I've lived with Lavan. Famously, what does Rashi says? Im Lavan garti, gematria, taryog mitzvos shamarti. I lived with Lavan, and I fulfilled the 613 mitzvos. There's another phrase that Rashi adds in that we don't quote, right? Im Lavan garti is gematria, im taryog mitzvos shamarti, right? Velo limadati mimaisim haraim. And I did not learn from Lavan these evil actions. So, the Farshim ask, that's quite repetitive. You just told the Esav that you fulfilled 613 mitzvahs. What does it mean? You have to tell him now you didn't learn bad behavior? You fulfilled 613 mitzvahs. You're not learning bad behavior. He says, no, that's the point. Yaakov says, I didn't just fulfill the 613 mitzvahs as if they were actions. I put my motivation, I put my effort into them, I put my mindset behind it. They made an impact on me. Right? In mitzvahs garti, in lavan garti, taryag mitzvah shamarti. It's not just that I fulfilled them. I did them with the intention. I did them in a complete manner. Right? So that's how you have to fulfill the mitzvahs. Okay? What's going on here with Sefer Yeshayahu, right? And this is what Rav Shab speaks about, is that all through the first Beis Hamikdash, what the Nevi'im are basically saying is that you failed to understand the mindset that is such a requisite ingredient of how to bring a korban. Right? You go back to Shaul and Amalek. And Shmuel gets upset with Shaul because he decides that these are beautiful animals that the nation of Amalek has. We got to take them, offer them as karbanos. And Shmuel says to him, you think HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants beautiful animals from Amalek? You think that's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu is interested? If they're beautiful animals, that means they must be offered as karbanos? Where's the mindset you got to put in? He's not interested in the animals from Amalek, right? And so Sefer Yeshayahu is going to once again respond to the Jewish people and their effort to bring karbanos, that it doesn't matter, right, how beautiful these animals are, right? If while you're shechting the animal, you're not thinking about how you yourself is broken because of an aveira, so then these karbanos are not going to help you. That was first Beis Hamikdash. Interesting enough, what Rosh Schwab says is that in the second Beis Hamikdash, they reversed it. They heeded the message of the mistake of the first Beis Hamikdash. Mindset. It's all about our kavana. It's all about what we put into the karban. What was the deranged behavior of the second Beis Hamikdash? Right? Is that they were not sticklers for the halacha. So if the animal has a mum, but I'm putting all my effort into it. Forget that the animal has a mum to it, and forget that I'm not doing it exactly as I should be doing it. Right? I'm spiritually, I feel uplifted. Right? Our generation, I think, is much more like that second Beis Hamikdash. It might not be perfect, but if I feel close to God, it must be that I am close to God. You're not keeping Shabbos? Yeah, but I feel close to God. Right? So it's fascinating how it's so challenging for us to get both the halachic considerations as well as the spiritual considerations down pat. And that's what both sides of this, both parts of both the first Beis Hamikdash and the second Beis Hamikdash, they had a hard time combining the two.
The first Beis Hamikdash period, wasn't there never a period where they were in private idols in all throughout Israel? I think none of the kings were able to eliminate.
After Shlomo.
Right.
Correct.
They were never able to undo it, so.
But I think you give that Bamos.
Yeah.
Almost, right.
That's not necessarily idols.
It's not necessarily idols, right, but it's
It's like davening at home.
right. It's
Okay.
it's backyard bumbles. It's a sense of right. I don't need to go to the Beis Hamikdash because second best is good enough for me, kind of thing. Yeah. So again, I'm just trying to create
something like what you're describing as the second temple mentality. That you're saying, right? I feel, I'm doing it in my home. I feel really close. I'm offering, and I'm not a stickler for the detail of going. So that seems to be parallel to what you described as the
what Sefer Yeshayahu.
No, what you described as the problem in the second temple, where they were big on Kavana, but not so much for halakha.
Right.
Right. So I'm saying that the idea of daven, doing your own.
Oh, that Bamos being an idea in the first Beis Hamikdash.
Seems to be a parallel.
Uh-huh.
Having that Kavana, but
Right.
just not going to the Beis Hamikdash.
Well, interesting. The other way to look at a bama, it's interesting. We can further explore what bamos really are, but it could be that bamos halachically fit every description, that it matches every halachic description, meaning bamos were permitted, right? What was the problem with bamos? The mentality behind it, right?
I'm a little confused. What is a bummer? Because I thought that they were idol.
I don't think bamos were idol worshiping. I think a bama was a private altar that was allowed, not at all times when the Beis Hamikdash stood, but at different times. Really, bamos had their heyday with the Mishkan, if I'm correct.
No, also when they went into the temporary.
Anytime there was a temporary central place, right, for service, you were allowed to have private bamos as well.
Private sacrifices.
Correct.
But weren't there sacrifices placed on these or not?
Yes.
Yes,
So that being the case, I thought.
not all sacrifices, kind of like
Private sacrifices. The
voluntary
ones
sacrifices.
that have to be given.
I thought the whole point was that
Right.
once Beis Hamikdash was present, that all that was prohibited. That's what
I have to look again when
There were times-
when bamos were permitted and when they were prohibited. I always thought, I could be wrong, I always thought that is, I have to look again.
Once Space Mikdash was built, no more
You
bumps.
would, that's what I thought.
But during the time they had.
It was really the Mishkan.
Here where
I think it was like the first 400 years without a Beis Hamikdash. That's where Bamos had their history.
Shiloh and
Right.
When they
Right.
were there, you were allowed to have a
Right. Okay, we got 5 minutes. Such a beautiful. You guys have energy? Let's take a look at the first two psukim. We have to say that we started Sefer Yeshaya tonight. Okay, so Chazon Yeshayahu ben Amot. This is the vision of Yeshayahu, the son of Amot. Asher Chazah al Yehuda v'Yerushalayim, over the city of Yehuda and Yerushalayim. Bimei Uziyahu, who we spoke about. Yosam, Achaz, Chizkiyahu, Malcha Yehuda. These are the 4 kings which he prophesied, we said, a span of 80 years. Pasuk Bet. Okay, you're going to tell me where he's taking this from.
This is from the
Shimu Shamayim V'Hazini Eretz. Okay, listen the heavens and tilt your ear to me, land. Ki Hashem diber, for Hashem has spoken. Banim gidalti v'romamti. I have raised and exalted, elevated my sons, my children. V'hein pashubi, and they have reneged against me. They have turned away against
the
me.
opposite of what Moshe said. He said, the sky, hear me, and the earth should turn in the air.
Very good. So Mark got it right. It's Parshas Ha'azinu. Okay? Parshas Ha'azinu, famously before this song, Moshe calls Shamayim Va'aretz as witnesses, right, to this song that he's now going to sing to the Jewish people.
It's also an oath.
It's an oath. Okay, it's bizarre. It's part of my, right? It's what is going on here? So he can't call anybody else because everybody dies, so they won't be around forever. So he calls Shemayim, right? That's Rashi's first pshat. So he calls Shemayim Va'aretz, which are everlasting. Huh? So you're talking about an oath? How real can this oath be if Shemayim and Aretz are the ones who are testifying?
They're also the ones that can cause damage.
So I like Rashi's second. So Rashi's, including his first interpretation, is that the reason that these are the perfect witnesses is because when the Jewish people are acting in favor of God, Shemayim and Aretz, Shemayim brings rain, Aretz produces vegetation, and everything's working in sync. When the Jewish people are not in sync with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shemayim and Aretz are plugged up, no longer working. Sorry? Holding back, right? Good.
And this is appropriate because if you have somebody that's Chayav Misa, the witness is the ones that put their hands on them first.
Correct. Okay, good. Rashi has a second pshat. Okay, can I see it with you? Can you give me 5 minutes? Let's see it together. So turn to page 1100. Actually, I'm going to ask you to turn back to page 1092. 1092. 1092 is actually the end of Parshas Nitzavim, which, if anybody asks you, where's the first time that Shemayim and Aretz are called to attention, are called to be witnesses, it's really the end of Parshas Nitzavim, which is also fascinating because, as Mike alluded to earlier, when he said that any time that a transition of leadership is going to take place, right, it's almost like a new covenant is required because God tells them things are going to be challenging. So this is really when Moshe is giving off the leadership to Yehoshua. Am I in the right place? Okay. Take a look at Pasuk Yitet, page 1092, verse 19. Ha'idosi bachem hayomes hashamayim va'aretz ha'chaim va'amaves. When you make decisions, okay, think about Shemayim and Aretz. They're being brought here as aided. What's the pshat? So here's where Rashi says something beautiful. Okay, Rashi says, The very last line of the first column in Rashi. Ha'idosi bachem hayomas hashemayim. Amar lehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. What is God? What's the message that God is giving to the Jewish people? Histaklu b'shamayim shebarasi l'shamesh eschem. What I want you to do is look towards the heavens, which were created to serve you, Jewish people. Shamash shinoas midasam. Do they ever change their nature? I created them. Their nature is as such to follow my orders. Shemalo Allah Gilgel Chama min Amizrach veher lachol ha'olam. Basically, is there ever a day where the sun doesn't shine? Right? Ki'inyan shnemar v'zerach hashemesh uva hashemesh. Histaklu baretz. Look at the land. Shebarasi l'shamesh eschem, which I created to serve you. Shema shinta midasa. Has it again ever changed its nature? Shema zarata mosav v'lo tzimcha. Have you ever planted and it hasn't flourished? Which is interesting because we do that all the time, right? Sometimes the words only come up. O shema zaratem chitim va'alasa sorim. Or maybe do you ever plant wheat and barley comes up? Right? Meaning there's a certain order. Uma elu shenasu lo l'skar v'lo lahefsid. And these which do their job, and there's never a question of me giving them reward or punishment. They just, like everything else in this world that is within the cycle of nature, HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects them to fulfill their task, and there's never a discussion about, let me give the sun its reward, let me punish the ground for not bringing forth food, right? Im zochen in mekablam schar ve'im chotin ein mekamlam paranios. There's not that discussion that ensues. Lo shinas midasim, and they keep their cycle, they keep their task, they continue to do what they're supposed to do. Atem, you. She'im zechisem, if you do the right thing, tikablu sachar, you get great reward. V'im chatasem tiskablu paranios, and chas v'sham, you go the other way, Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to have to punish you. Al achas kama v'kama, how much more so? What's Rashi saying here in this interpretation? Remember, his first interpretation was, look to Shemayim va'aretz, because they are there forever. Fine. Look to Shemayim va'aretz in the second explanation because they're the ones who I've given over the power to actually give you bracha or withhold bracha if you're doing the right thing. His third explanation, which is a different selection, different spot actually, is that no. They are models for you. They every day fulfill their task in taking Hashem's orders and fulfilling them to the nth degree. Jewish people, you're not so different. Yeah, you have bechira chavshis, you have free will, you have your people, but you have orders too, right? You are included in this cycle of nature where the Jewish people have a task. What's their task? That's what we started talking about earlier. Or lagoyim is serving Hashem. Call it what you want. Anytime you veer from that, right? Shemayim and Aretz are going to be there to say, we're doing it, how come you're not? And so it's really an interesting explanation to look at Shemayim va'aretz that way. Here, in Sefer Yeshayahu, it gets even crazier. Why do you reverse it? Why does Yeshayahu reverse? Right? It's Hazinu, it's Hazinu Hashemayim, tilt your ear, heavens. Hazinu Hashemayim, What's the words? Hazinu Hashemayim. What's the words for Aretz?
Here.
V'sishma Aretz. So tilt your ear, heavens, and listen up, earth. The way Yeshayahu has it, the other way around. Shimu Shemayim, the heavens should listen. The Hazinu Aretz, and tilt your ear, land. Why so? So that's one answer. That this is Yeshayahu's humility. That Moshe, who's closer to the heavens, can say, tilting your ear is, you're close, you're right there. All you have to do is tilt your ear. So Moshe can say that. Go ahead.
The last day of his life, so he was close. He had already left the earth, so to speak.
He wasn't a full human being as it was, to some extent. Yeah, his humility is here. I'm going to use the same message as Moshe, but I can't possibly use the same words.
Also, he's
right?
Going to be here in this world to work, whereas Moshe was going to be gone.
Oh, interesting. That Yeshayahu himself almost can, at least for the time that he's here, right? This is just the starting of his career, perhaps, where he can be there in a sense in the same way that Shemaim Aretz are to see if the message holds true. Very nice. Right? Very nice. So those are the first two psukim. We'll have to see the third pasuk next time, Bez Hashem. That's what we'll start with understanding what it means that a shore, an ox, knows its owner, and that a donkey goes to eat, knows who's feeding it. Right? This is real rebuke from Yeshayahu to compare the Jewish people to an ox and a donkey. But Bez Hashem we'll have next time to look into it. Very good. Yasher Koach, guys. Thank you so much.